In this tutorial, we'll examine the contents of the PSICAT project folder. We'll only be using PSICAT for a moment. Mostly we'll be looking under the hood. It's not necessary to know this stuff, but it can be helpful in certain situations, or where PSICAT lacks a user interface for certain operations. Before we proceed, if you want to tinker, by all means do so, but I recommend doing so on a copy of any projects that mean anything to you or the ones you love. A complete PSICAT project, one that includes sections with images and one or more schemes, will contain three main subfolders: data, images, and schemes. Data contains one XML file for each section in your project. Try opening a file. Its contents are surprisingly readable. You can see intervals, occurrences, your descriptions, and so on. An occurrence is just PSICAT's internal name for a symbol, by the way. If you're feeling lucky and ambitious, you can manually edit the contents of a data file, but it's not encouraged. If you do so, I strongly recommend closing the project in PSICAT before doing so, otherwise strange things may happen. Next, we'll look at the images folder. Images contains the images that you've imported into the project. One application of this folder is if you need to replace a single section's image, you could take a new image and drop it into this folder, replacing the old one. You should definitely close the project in PSICAT before doing this. However, you should be careful. If the size of the replacement image differs at all from that of the original, your image will end up being distorted in its appearance because the original physical length of the original section image is maintained in the section's data file, in that XML file. This can be modified as well, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. You could do it manually, again, if you're feeling brave and crazy. But as long as your image is the same size as or your replacement image is the same size as the original, that should be an operation that works well without issue. Finally, the schemes folder, I need to stop closing that. The schemes folder contains the scheme files used in your project. If you choose default schemes when you create a new project, the default PSICAT schemes are copied into this folder and prefixed with the name of your project, and that's what we see here. I just use default schemes. So I have my project name lithologies, my project name symbols, and then this other equipment scheme, which is actually not used at present, but we still copy it over there. So this was a project created with default schemes. If, on the other hand, when you created your project, you chose custom schemes, no default PSICAT schemes would be added, so none of these would be here. Only the schemes you explicitly add to your project will be available. And just as with the default schemes, when you add those schemes, they'll be copied into your project schemes folder, but without a prefix in your project name. But it's important to remember that any scheme you add, wherever you take it from, it will be copied into your project's folder. It's important to understand that because if you later want to modify that scheme, you're going to need to modify the project's copy of that scheme, not the original scheme that you added to the project, probably, unless, or yeah, almost 99% of the time. All right, so no more babbling. And then there's one more interesting application of understanding the structure of the PSICAT project folder, and that is an issue on Windows. It's an issue related to Java, which is what PSICAT's built on. And it prevents you from deleting, let me open the project here. It prevents the deletion of schemes while PSICAT is running. So if I go to the Choose Schemes dialog, as I mentioned, the equipment scheme is never used. Let's say I want to get rid of it. I can click Remove Selected Scheme. It does disappear from this list, and if I hit OK, all seems to be well. However, if I actually return to my folder and look, you'll see that it is still there. It has not been deleted because Java is not allowing us to delete it. So unfortunately on Windows, and actually if we go to Choose Schemes, we'll see that it has returned even though we deleted it. So the only way at present to delete a scheme on Windows is when PSICAT is closed. Unfortunately, you have to manually go in there and delete the scheme yourself. So I'll delete this equipment scheme. And now, if I reload PSICAT, which will just take a second, and open that project again, we will see that that scheme is now gone. We go to Choose Schemes. Now it's gone. We'll try to fix that at some point. But for now, that's how you work around it. So there is some value in understanding the structure of the PSICAT project folder. And that's it for this tutorial.